Well, thank you very much. So today, it's always difficult to know what to do on these meetings. Do I address new people or do I address the guys who have been with us for a long time? So I'm going to start running through a presentation, talking to any new guys, which I'm sure there are some, and I'll finish up talking about what all of the older guys want to hear is what is going on and when on earth are you going to start putting tungsten into the market. So my name is Lewis Black. I'm the CEO and president, founder of Almonty Industries. We are the leader outside of China in tungsten production. And we are currently in full swing in the construction of the fully financed Shandong tungsten mine, which is the world's largest tungsten mine, essentially. Basically, we don't know anything except tungsten. So we know a lot about tungsten, we don't know much about anything else. And we have 126 years under our belt in Portugal, which are Portuguese mine, giving us 5 generations of knowledge. The financing journey that we took for Shandong was very specific. We had always desired a financing package that would sustain the business and its growth. And that took obviously quite a while because traditionally companies such as ourselves are not in a position to attract such financing. But we did sufficient enough work to get KfW IPEX Bank over the finish line. It's funded, we're drawing down, and we got there. And again, KfW IPEX have expressed an ongoing desire to continue to support us in our downstream opportunities. As a corporate snapshot, our stock has responded well to the news. Obviously, we've had one particular shareholder, and I think we've disclosed this before, who for his own reasons, which I can't describe here without getting into a lawsuit, to get out. It has nothing to do with us, it's more to do with him. And obviously that has impacted our stock price, but ultimately he's almost gone. And when he has finished, we should see then the stock begin to appreciate back to the levels that we have previously seen. Between myself, Gosia Rostov, Planty Group, we have a very tightly held group of people who have been in this right from the get-go and remain committed to seeing this through to a successful conclusion. Our Portuguese mine is still in operation. This year, I believe, marks 127 years. Shandong is, as I said, well under construction. Valtrachal is the permits are, again, we should finish the permitting during this year. We haven't really pushed this mainly because we've been focusing on Korea, but there is more and more appetite now for a European-based source of supply. And so ultimately, I think we're now really pushing that forward. And in Los Santos, yes, the tailings is an ongoing conversation. But again, we come back to the fact that our focus is almost exclusively on South Korea, because that is going to be the transformational project within our company. Price of tungsten, well, it's held up remarkably well. If we look through the last 12 months, where we saw pretty much every other commodity drop off, tungsten did not. It stayed within 5% of its multi-year highs, and it's now started to rise again. This is essentially driven by supply disruptions out of China, but also a quite dramatic increase in demand, both from the technology space and also from defense. So those two spaces have more than covered the drop from automotive, as automotive have had significant backlogs because of the semiconductor issue. But we've seen defense and technology really drive this, and we expect it to continue to rise quite dramatically during this year. And as I think we've also said previously, China and Russia dominate tungsten production. So you can obviously understand that any sort of disruptions from either of those countries can have profound effects, especially if demand in the West is increasing in these two sectors. Look, I've always said this before, this is a vast resource. I couldn't even spend an hour trying to explain the scale of this deposit. It is extraordinary. I mean, we're working only 2 of our 10 areas. We know a 3rd area has high grade tungsten in vast amounts for work that was done previously by the government in Korea. Tungsten. It's one of probably one of the last great tier 1 mines that are left. I always talk about the good-looking bunch, so we won't labor on this. But as I said, we've been together for many years. As I said, these guys are 4th, 5th generation guys. They've always done tungsten. That's it. So I think that's a very important part. Tungsten is a very, very difficult metal to process. It doesn't behave like anything else. It's very brittle. It requires an enormous amount of sensitivity in grade control, in grinding, and in processing. And I think that what has been clearly demonstrated over the years is that if you don't have that background, that track record, or at least that knowledge behind you, it's a really big uphill battle to try and find solutions. I'm not saying that we're smarter than anyone else. We're not. We just happen to have an enormous amount of experience that, whether it be, us or some of these guys' dads or their grandfathers, we've seen problems in the past and solutions have been found. And so that's a very important distinction to remember. Peer groups are always tricky. They're very subjective. I think all I can say is we know tungsten, we've done it a long time, and we have a project in Samdong that has always been recognized, by our sector to be the big one because of its grade and longevity and its location. So I think that's all the sort of comparisons I would like to make. We obviously are in a crowded field, but I've always felt that we've always risen to the top ultimately. In terms of cost curve, it's very important that any major project be highly competitive with the bulk of the market, which is Chinese. Obviously, our Panasqueira mine is, on the more expensive end, but it's an old mine. But it contains the knowledge that enables us to build Samdong, to operate Samdong. So look at it as it doesn't cost us money. We make a small amount of money there. This year, we'll make probably around $4 or $5 million. That's it. But it's the one piece of the puzzle that if we didn't have it, we could not have approached Samdong. We could not have taken a 20th century mine and turned it into a 21st century ESG compliant project. Well, this gives you an idea of the scale. It's enormous. It would take you probably about just under 2 hours to walk from one end to the other on the surface in a straight line. So it's a big deposit. We have the entire project underpinned with a 15-year hard floor offtake with no cap on the upside, which is for 45% of our output, and the entire business is modeled on that. So ultimately, if the worst thing happened, I don't know, people started giving away free tungsten, the price of tungsten came down, we would still be in a situation where we would be guaranteed a minimum price on the basis of making 10 to 12 million of free cash flow, so we'd be able to cover all liabilities and commitments, which is very important. The loan from KfW is a traditional project finance lend that you would more normally see attached to much larger projects, for Rio, BHP, Fortescue. So ultimately, I think we've very much benefited from this loan. And of course, that is secured and backed up by OEKB, which is the Austrian government, who again have recognized with KfW and the Plancy Group the strategic importance of this project. Well, we're building. But I know you all want to see more pictures, but you're going to have to wait, and there's a good reason for that. But ultimately, everything is under construction. As I said, we're about 6 months ahead of schedule underground. I'm happy with the progress. Generally, I'm happy. I'm happy with how we're going. There's tungsten everywhere. That's all I'm going to say. Within a meter and a half of the portal, you run into tungsten. We can't even find barren areas to work for access ramps. It's an unusual problem to have as an operator, but a good one. Our scheduling has not changed. We may be running roughly 2 months, probably behind schedule, only because we've had stuff arrive later than we would have liked into country. But in my mind, given the longevity of this project, it is more important that we complete this on budget than complete it exactly on time, because we're building something that's going to run for more than 100 years. And it is very easy in any construction to find yourself in a situation where you need money at the end. And that money is normally extremely expensive, extremely punitive, and quite frankly, unforgivable. So if we say it's going to cost $1, we have to make sure it costs $1. And in this journey, you have to be nimble enough to ensure that that happens. You must keep your word on that. It's very important. And at this moment, we are comfortable with our outlook. The independent engineer of KfW is comfortable. Remember, we are under constant scrutiny. This is a classic project finance loan. So there's all kinds of reporting requirements and checks and balances. But at the moment, I am comfortable with our approach. Panascara, it's the giver of knowledge, and for that, all of our shareholders, including myself, are eternally thankful. We could not have done what we did with Samdong without this project. This project has made the difference. Just a small minute, we just completed a new tailings dam constructed by ourselves, designed by ourselves, constructed by ourselves for another 9 years. We have about 20 something years left at Panascara, realistically. But I think the building of the tailings dam highlights the depth of expertise that exists within this mine. We are able to operate independently. We have apprenticeship programs, we have workshops, we train boilermakers, carpenters, electricians. We create our own workforce. And this has been extremely important, not only for Panascara, but also for Samdong, that we've enabled us to really not just take, say, a consultant's word for it. We've been able to work and find solutions because of our experience. In a nutshell, we have a lot of reserves under our belt, and so we are well placed to continue to provide for Western supply for many years. So this is essentially just a slide very quickly. I think everyone who's been in this story for a while has seen this before. There's no questioning, when this mine comes online, it'll have a transformational effect on our revenue and earnings. It's an extraordinary project, and we've tried to only work in safe jurisdictions. This has been important, not just to our customers, but for our ESG compliance, but more importantly for ourselves. We have had a lot of experience working in Europe, and I think everyone acknowledges that from a regulatory point of view, it's not the easiest place to be, especially if you're in a mine. And it's prepped us very well for being able to work in democracies. And I think if you did any sort of research and you looked at how many mines are actually being constructed in democracies right now, it's not many. It's an undertaking. You have to really understand how to coexist in your environment, and not just think that money or jobs is going to be the decider. It's often not. We also work, obviously there are all kinds of programs that we run, including, as we say, the safety codes, safety awareness, all part of our ESG. What we are looking at in Korea is an active mining sector, but ESG is now slowly coming into the country. It's very much at the forefront of what the government wants to see. And we've done, elements like, for instance, we spent 3 years developing a unique underground digital safety system with Korea Telecom. means you can actually make and receive video calls underground. It's not a wireless system. So if there's a collapse or a problem, you don't lose access to it. It means we know where everyone is in lifetime, and it prepares us for the future, which is automation. And ultimately, in my mind, we have to be ready for automation, because the skilled part of the job, engineers and metallurgists and geologists, will always exist. But the operators of boomers, of LHDs, these are getting more and more difficult to find people, because ultimately, if you're leaving high school, you're going into college, why would you think to work as a boomer operator underground? It's the pool of access to people is getting smaller and smaller. So we have to be prepared for the future. And so we are constantly trying to evolve as a company in this regard. Again, this is just talking about the ESG. This was requirements that KfW had insisted upon, but ultimately, much of what we had to do, we'd already put in place in Portugal, because, as I said, to operate in a democracy, you have to understand how to coexist. And that is, to me, always been the key for a successful operation. Oh, this is talking about the Korea Telecom. Yes, I mean, we have a live system. It's quite extraordinary. The government has expressed, the Korean government has expressed interest to, in fact, introduce this across all mines. As I said, it took us 3 years to develop with our colleagues at Korea Telecom. It's an extraordinary system. We're a small company, but we managed to attract a tier 1 world-class financing from KfW, which normally wouldn't come to a company like this. We've been able to develop systems like this for Korea Telecom, and normally a small company like us wouldn't be doing this. But we've always managed to compete with China in terms of cost, because we're always trying to push ourselves to evolve. And we try and read what's going to happen in the future, not let the future catch up with us, and then we find we have a problem. So this to us is important. The community, well, the town is coming back to life. I mean, when we got there 6 years ago, you could see that, it was a forgotten place after the mine closed in '93. And they'd seen lots of promises made and nothing happened. But now you're seeing people paint the houses. You're seeing more people move to the area. You're seeing life return. And that's one of the reasons why we exist. It's not just to mine tungsten. You have to be part of the community. The community is part of you. So that is the end of this presentation, because I know there's always an awful lot of questions. Let's hope that's true today. So I now turn back to Matthias to say, okay, hit me. What do we got?
Yes, I already saw some tough questions in the chat. I hope you're ready for those.
Okay, all right, I'm sitting down.
So from Bruce, Lewis, can you comment on the recent share sale by Dundee Corporation? Or is this the entity that you mentioned has been selling and you're unable to talk about? I believe Dundee's most recent financial show, they have sold approximately 1 million of their 4.5 million share position. They may still own warrants. Can you confirm?
Okay, they don't own any warrants. That is true. They actually have now less, I understand, than 2.5 million shares. Yes, we are aware they are divesting their entire position. We remember they never bought stock in Almonty. This was part of the remuneration they received when we bought Samdong. So they've never really, we've obviously always wanted engagement with them, but they had change of personnel and obviously they had their own new direction. And so, like in many funds, when the PM changes, they flush the book. This is very much the case. Is it unfortunate that this is the case? Yes, because it has a short-term disruptive effect. But I look at it this way: it enables shareholders, whether new or existing, to acquire stock that are significantly undervalued from a willing seller. But I can't offer any other insight without ending up in litigation. So. I hope that answers as much of the questions as I can answer.
Okay, there are two more tough ones coming from Bruce. So So, Louis, you mentioned you haven't changed the schedule. However, slide 16, you showed today as you starting the mine activities in Q3 2024, while slide 16 from the presentation you shared in December, which is still on Almonty's website, shows the start of the mining activities in Q3 2023. Can you explain, as this is not just a 2 months change?
Well, I think ultimately the one on the website will be updated. As I said, we have received the equipment late, but the start of the commissioning will still occur, we anticipate, at the end of this year. But I want to buy myself a little time because I have to change one of the drives that we have just, Metso now is now constructing. And I've seen all kinds of problems with getting allocation on vessels. So I'm trying now to incorporate more time into completion, that if I then come back and say I'm going to be earlier, everyone's going to be happy, rather than say that I'm going to be earlier and end up being late and everyone's going to be unhappy. So good find. I think that this presentation that we now have will be updated to the website after this webinar. But yes, we have had an issue with one drive and getting it built. It is now under construction, and we expect it to be ready in April. And then it depends how quickly I can get it to Korea. It's over a ton in weight, so I can't put it on a plane. So it's going to go by vessel, but at the moment we're looking at least 60 days. And we still have to stress test it before we actually install it. This one I'll stress test in Korea, not in Europe. In Europe, I did all the other stress testing in Europe before it was shipped, but this one because of timing. So that has created some delay. But we're on budget, and that's an important thing to always remember too.
That is true. That is true. And the last one from Bruce, an easy one. Louis, the updates you provide through the IIF are helpful. Thank you. Can you share how current and potential shareholders can get in touch with Almonty to ask questions between the presentations? Does Almonty respond to retail investors?
Yes, we do. info@almonty.com, is looked at. I think somebody looks at it once a month. I apologize. We're a small team. And over the last probably 18 months, a lot more retail investors have come into this. And you have a lot of questions. And I'd like to answer the questions myself. And there's a lot of you. So I try and get through the list, and I apologize. And we are actually looking in Korea at bringing on a person who's exclusively going to do PR, because it's sort of overwhelming now. It's overwhelming, I think is the best word for it, because I really think it should be personal. I'm a large shareholder, and I've always responded in the past personally directly to shareholders, but we've just picked up, literally thousands of new shareholders, and there's questions coming from every direction. So yes, Bruce, I apologize if you're waiting for an answer. You can email us, but we are right now recruiting in Korea for somebody whose dedicated job it's going to be is to respond directly to shareholders, but they will check with me first. So, you won't just get a generic answer of thanks for calling and, have a great day. But they can at least put it in a way that I can go through it much quicker. So I apologize, Bruce, but I'm on it. I know it's an issue.
Yeah, but I think that's the right approach. Next question coming from Dirk. After the latest 2 million private placement, do you see more dilution this year? And what is the money needed for, since Shandong is fully financed? Okay,
the 2 million, there are times when you get phone calls from existing institutional shareholders who say, look, I've got to do this. I got to fill this part of my book. I want to do 2 million. Oh, there was a million a piece or something. It was 2 Australian institutions. I got a phone call. What was I going to do? If I say no, they get upset. And if I say yes, you get upset. So I'm caught between a rock and a hard place. We don't need the money. I mean, of course, listen, everybody needs money for something. I can always find something to use it for, but it was a question of, we had two existing shareholders who've been very supportive in the IPO, and they were, closing out one part of a book, and they just wanted to fill up. That was it. It wasn't something that we went out and marketed per se. It was just essentially two shareholders who wanted to come in. In terms of going forward, well, let us see how our downstream evolves, the tungsten oxide. We may have to go back to the market for that, but ultimately you're adding such a value with that proposition that it's going to be negligible. And at these share prices, I'm not interested in doing anything, to be perfectly honest.
And the next one coming from Hans. Is it possible in the future to release once per month updates on the works of Shandong?
When I get my PR person, that's exactly what they're going to be doing. That's why we're doing it. I mean, I've got hundreds of pictures. I mean, it's complete chaos. And we're engineers, we're metallurgists. This is a whole new area for us. Before we had a few shareholders, 100 or 150 retail guys and institutions, and it was an easy management. Now we have thousands. We've been amazed at the response. I mean, tungsten is front and center now. You've got the US government saying we can't ship tanks to Ukraine because we need tungsten, shielding, the tungsten web shielding for the tanks, and we can't get any tungsten. You've got the EU saying we don't have any munitions to send to Ukraine because we have no tungsten. It's like it's coming from all directions. We fully understand that part of this business as we transition now to a mid-cap is that we have to have in place an infrastructure that is more informative. And again, I apologize. We're damn good at building tungsten mines and operating them. We're pretty lousy sometimes at spreading information. And for that, I have to hold responsibility. But yes, we are interviewing now for a good PR person who is going to be essentially keeping everybody in the loop.
Okay. And Tom is asking, when do you reach a break even? Probably with Shandong.
Well, I mean, theoretically, it's a chemical plant, so that the throughput is highly predictable. I will have about 9 months of stockpile on surface when we commission. So according to our own evaluation through the pilot plant and through the model, we should be break even within 3 months. It's not a gravity plant. Gravity plant is a 9-month journey of balancing, which I personally really enjoy. I love the art of a balance of a gravity plant, but it's a bit of in Portugal, we've got the highest recoveries in the world through gravity, but it took them 40 years to get there. This is a flotation plant. It's far more predictable because it's a chemical process. The important thing is I have ore to feed. If I have that, then theoretically, and it's what we expect, we should be able to maintain our predictions.
So we have just 8 seconds left. That's
okay.
Not enough time for more questions. So thank you very much, Louis.
Oh, thanks, Matthias. So sorry, but if you want the other questions to send them over, I can get back to them.
I try to do that, and I hope you can answer them and not just your PR person. And
yeah, all right, Matthias. Okay, have your last jab on the way out the door. Okay, thanks for that. Okay, point taken. Thanks, Matthias. Take care. Thank you very much.